So we showed you this joke, right? Every girl is bi. You just have to figure out if it's polar or sexual. Not the greatest joke, not the worst joke. Dave Weigel retweeted it at the Washington Post. He's a Washington Post guy. And then his colleague, who also works at the Washington Post, someone named Felicia Sonmez. How do you say her name? Sonmez. Yeah. So she's an unhinged maniac, I found out. Turns out she's a pretty unhinged. She's the worst thing that you could think of someone like her being. She retweets it. It says, fantastic to work at a news outlet where retweets like this are allowed. At first I thought he was quoting a Billie Eilish song, but apparently it's some kind of joke. And by the way, she says, fantastic to work at a news outlet where retweets like this are allowed. It is fantastic to work at an outlet where they don't police your retweets, isn't it? It does sound pretty fantastic, actually. Oh, wait a minute. She's being sarcastic. Okay. So Dave Weigel had to immediately apologize. I just removed that retweet of you. I'm really sorry. Doesn't matter. They suspended him, right? They suspended him because she got upset. Look at her smiling like, this is why I got into journalism. That's what it is.
Oh.
Now, the irony is, this guy, Dave Weigel, had previously defended her. He had defended her because when Kobe Bryant died, she tweeted out he's a rapist, right? Let's remember.
She said we shouldn't forget his allegations.
Yes, that's what she said.
Yeah.
She said we shouldn't forget his allegations. So Washington Post, Dave Weigel defended her after the Kobe treat, and $20, it's because he thought he was going to get laid. All right. That's me.
Very clear.
David Weigel, benched without pay for a month on Monday, defended his fellow political reporter Felicia Sonmez in early 2020 when she was suspended by the paper after posting a tweet linking to a 2016 story detailing rape allegations against the NBA superstar. So now what is actually, I think it was Voltaire who once said, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will not defend your right to say it, nor return the favor if you defend my right to say things. I think that's what it was. So there's an article in Vanity Fair called The Clusterf Inside the Washington Post Social Media Meltdown. So this became a big thing. So on Tuesday afternoon, Washington Post reporter Josh Dawsey tweeted that he was proud to work at the paper, a place filled with many terrific people who are smart and collegial. There it is. So after she did this, she went on a tear. I'll show you some of her tweets. But she went on a tear trying to get him fired. She got him suspended. And then she tried to get another employee fired for telling her to cool it. And so it became a big thing, and that's why Vanity Fair did this article. It's a big cluster F inside the Washington Post. And then what the Washington Post did was they sent out a memo to their people who work for them. Hey, start saying nice things about the Washington Post. And so they started doing it. There it is. Josh Dawsey was the first one, and no institution is perfect, including the Post. But the place is filled with many terrific people who are smart and collegial. I'm proud to work here. And then 4 minutes later, reporter Rosalind Helderman tweeted that she was proud to work at the Post, which is always striving to be better than it was yesterday. There she is. It's got good people who work hard to do important journalism, and I'm proud to work here.
Oh, she put her own words into it, I see.
She made it her own.
Yeah.
So smart and collegial, I think, means craven and careerist. I think that's what that means. 6 minutes later, another reporter, Amy Gardner, she tweeted how she was proud to work at the paper, followed by other top journalists at the publication, including Matt Visor, Carol Leonig, and Dan Balls. Nice name, Dan.
I stand with balls.
I stand with balls. And you got to have a lot of balls to fucking tweet that out. So anyway, what's funny about and here's another one. I'll give you one more. The Post is not perfect. No institute. It's Ashley Parker. She was, but I'm proud to work here. I love coming to work almost every single day and knowing that my colleagues are collegial, collaborative, and fun humans, not to mention talented journalists who are always striving to do better. So they all did their own version of that same those same talking points are in there. They even use a lot of the same words. We're all striving to do better. They're collegial and all that. So they
We do notice they're all proud to work at the Washington Post, but not with Dave Weigel. Not one Dave Weigel's an okay guy to protect the Post.
So the public outpouring of Post pride, which I'm told political reporters were urging one another to take part in, followed executive editor Sally Busby's memo reiterating workplace policies and promoting collegiality among staff. So I love that as these twits, they had to urge each other to take part in a gently suggesting this vicious dingbat might be toxic. So Dave Weigel, a national political correspondent, is as of Monday suspended without pay for the next month after retweeting a sexist tweet last week, which he then promptly has unshared and apologized for after a colleague called him out both on company Slack and publicly. That, you know who that is. So Glenn Greenwald goes, this is just weird and creepy. Why are they all posting identical language about how proud they are to work at the Washington Post? Like from a script handed down by a cult leader. And then he links to all their tweets. He says, I suppose this is how these Washington Post reporters have decided to condemn Felicia for her 5 days of maniacal attacks on her maniacal. I like to say maniacal.
I thought so.
Maniacal attacks on her. Boy, that makes me laugh deep in my stomach. Maniacal attacks on her colleagues and attempt to get several fired. But it's bizarre how they all use the same coordinated, cryptic language and waited this long. Cowardly. Oh,
so they all had to do their own Bilderberg meeting to decide how to tweet about this?
Yes. Guess what? So this person says, when you send out suggested copy to all your digital volunteers, and they all use the first suggested tweet. Guess who? So this person's making fun of the Washington Post reporters who were tweeting out nice things about working at the Washington Post. Because it came from, they're saying, why did you just kind of verbatim just post what they told you in a memo? And guess who retweeted it? Felicia Sonmez.
Oh my God.
She retweeted this, making fun of all the rest of the people who work at Washington Post, who were saying what a nice collegial place it is to work at the Washington Post. She retweets somebody taking a swipe at everybody at the Washington Post.
Didn't Taylor Lorenz do this with the people trying to help her dumb story?
This is the Post. Felicia is now mocking all of her newsroom colleagues for using identical language to defend management against her. May this never end. The vindictive sociopathy of these vipers on vivid display here is what prevails in all of these liberal corporate outlets. He's 100% right. I think a backlash is coming. I think this kind of shit is starting to turn. I think it's starting to turn, and I think it's starting to turn with Johnny Depp, Joe Biden, and now Dave M.F. and Weigel. It's starting to turn.
This was inflation as well, you know?
Yeah. Hours after news of Weigel's suspension broke Monday, that colleague, political reporter Felicia Sonmez, was urging the paper to take action against a different colleague. Jose Del Rio, who on Saturday took aim at Sonmez for the cruelty you regularly unleash against colleagues. He made this point after commending her for your bravery in sharing your story. I support your fight against retribution for doing so. So that didn't save him. She still tried to get him fired.
He commended her bravery. Did you see that?
So he says down here, he says, Felicia, because she tweets out this thing trying to get him fired. And he says, Felicia, we all mess up from time to time. Engaging in repeated and targeted public harassment of a colleague is neither a good look nor is particularly effective. It turns the language of inclusivity into clout chasing and bullying. I don't think this is appropriate. Whoa, boy.
You know why? Because he didn't DM her this message.
Right.
he put this. So that's how they must be really sick of her. For him to do something this loud.
Believe me, the people at the Washington Post are sick of her, but the Washington Post is afraid to fire her. Just like because of the Taylor Lorenz culture we live in now, and everybody's called. But I'm telling you, the tide is turning.
When did they get a call from space from Jeff Bezos to clear this up?
Here she retweets him. She goes updates for so he finally blocked her. And he's like, then people start coming at him, and he's just saying, "Hey, look, I'm just trying to get back to conviviality." And he says, "I'll end here where I began. Let's be kinder to each other. I really believe empathy is necessary." She retweets that, still trying to get him fired, retweets it again and says, "It's hard for me to understand why the Washington Post hasn't done anything about these tweets in which one of its employees mischaracterizes his own actions and accuses a colleague of clout chasing and bullying for publicly objecting to sexism." Says, "Is this who we are?"
Sexism.
Well, what about you retweeting that thing that humiliated all of your colleagues? She's a maniac. And of course she works for the fucking Washington Post. They're all mental cases.
Look, there was no unrelenting series of attacks. That she's posted an unrelenting series of her attacks.
Yes. So predictable. Felicia Sonmez carried on a public 4-day crusade to get her colleague Dave Weigel suspended without pay. Of course, her bloodlust isn't satisfied. Now she's publicly demanding that the Washington Post editors discipline another reporter for having politely objected to her outbursts. These are all out of order, Kurt, which is why I can't do them.
Okay. It does stand on its own.
Yes. The Post drama spilling out publicly onto Twitter has upended the newsroom, where there's no shortage of opinions on the continued fallout. I think Felicia was initially right. That was a gross Dave Weigel tweet. No, it wasn't. Gross.
Get some
It was a
grit.
retweet.
But first of all, that joke is being proven correct because she's a bipolar maniac.
Wait, you know what? I think she doesn't mean the tweet was gross. I think his nickname around the office is Gross Dave Weigel.
Oh, that's it. His nickname is Gross. That's it. All right. And that was a gross Dave.
What did Gross Dave say now?
What's Gross Dave doing with his month of suspension?
You know what? Don't defend me, Gross Dave. Whenever he wants to kill me for my Kobe tweet.
That's what they call him. That's his nickname.
Gross Dave's mustache.
Okay.
Got some crumbs in his stash.
The gross Dave Weigel tweet, and we were all grateful she called attention to it. One Post staffer told me the problem, the staffer added, was in continuing to make it an issue and go after more and more colleagues. How can you imagine working at a place like that?
She was only supposed to destroy one person's life.
That's right.
Retweet. Not everybody.
Yeah, they still won't acknowledge the dominoes of once you censor one person, it then becomes ridiculous. And it just literally happened the entire process to them in one hit.
In one hit. Michael Tracy says, last year, Felicia Sonmez accused me of trying to silence trauma survivors like herself. By the way, Felicia, people who like to call themselves trauma survivors, we're all trauma survivors as a virtue of just being alive. We've all had trauma. All of us have had trauma. If you're a human being and you're alive, you've had trauma. So you're not special, and your pain, Felicia, I know no one's ever told you this, but your pain is fucking ordinary. It's ordinary. You don't have special trauma. What you do is cause special trauma to other people by getting them fucking fired because you're a maniac, bipolar nutcase. So the rest of his tweet, luckily, she couldn't run to my employer and demand I be punished, but she has successfully seized institutional veto power at the Washington Post using emotional terrorism tactics.
Well,
that's what this is. Go ahead. What?
Look for her at next year's Bilderberg meeting.
That's right. Sagar and Jetty says, Sagar and Jetty of the Hudson Institute, the neocon Hudson Institute, after much deliberation, I've decided I'm now pro Felicia Sonmez. He's really not. He's kidding. It's a joke. Now Ryan Grimm will tell you that I don't get the joke. Her behavior is just taking the woke therapeutic language in the workplace to its logical conclusion. Her actions now force cowardly management to reckon with what their policies actually look like in practice. So what he's saying this is actually a good moment because now everybody gets a good. Is that what correct me if I'm wrong? He's saying
I agree. I'm enjoying it immensely
because everybody gets to see what the logical progression of these kind of policies and this kind of culture is. Now you want everybody to get fired at the Washington Post? Is that, I'm not misinterpreting what he's saying, am I?
I stood by and said nothing, but when they got to Gross Dave, I said enough is enough.
And just so you know about how mental she is, she had sex with a colleague and they were both drunk. She then got that guy fired because she said he took advantage of her because she couldn't give consent because she was drunk. He was also drunk. So she got that guy fired and ruined his career. And then she called herself a victim. And so then the Washington Post, after she got that guy fired at the Washington Post for having sex, she had sex with him voluntarily and then got him fucking fired afterwards for fucking her.
Well, I'm sure there was some kind of power dynamic horseshit too thrown into the mix.
And then the Washington Post wouldn't let her cover stories like that about harassment and stuff because she wouldn't be impartial because she was a victim herself. She sued the Washington Post over it. The judge tossed it out with prejudice, meaning she can't bring it up again. And yet the Washington Post is still shitting their pants over her and still suspending fucking reporters because of her. Why don't you fucking fire her? Why don't they fire her? I know why. Because this is the culture that they like. This scold culture where the worst thing you could do is tell a joke that offends a mental person.
Well, these are like useful maniacs. You know, let's say we got to destroy the gray zone. Like,
yes,
these are the kind of maniacs you go to. And everybody goes to them. I think they get, because I've seen this in every like genre of everything. My friend that complained about a Star Wars movie got put on a pipeline to the alt-right list for it. They all pay these maniacs. They're like just professional shills. It's like
yes.
PR. That's what it is now, PR.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you can't destroy us by proving we're a vehicle for the FSB. So just try something much easier in this culture. Sexual blackmail. I mean, which is kind of a spook tactic.
Well, I think they're mad about Amber Heard losing because that was what got affected.
Yeah.
Maniacs like that who try to do just last minute make up some, and then you find out they're the total abuser, that kind of stuff.
We should call it a Kasparian. I think we should call that. We should call
wild compared to this.
This, yeah, well, yeah, I know. Well, that's because she couldn't get me fired, but believe me, she would have tried if she could. Anyway, there it is. So this is a big watershed moment in the culture. I think people are, even people at the Washington Post are kind of sick of it. It seems like we'll see. Because
reporting on it?
Because this always gets couched as if you don't like someone like her, you're a Trumper, right? Because that's how everything gets reported. Even the Amber Heard thing, the maniacs over at the Young Turks were trying to make it if you're for Johnny Depp, you're a right winger. That's because it's crazy Kasparian.
Is that what she said?
That's what the Young Turks were saying. Yes, they're trying to make it into a right wing, left wing thing. The Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing. Yes, they were doing that.
Time's up.
What a crazy story.
Well, it reminds me so much of the last 15 years working in progressive media. I know. I mean, I had to start my own outlet because so many of the places I'd worked in or around were sabotaged and destroyed by Felicias like this, like complete sociopaths who loved wrecking everything, who stood for nothing and found some little in-group of fellow sociopaths to destroy, either to like take aim at people who they disagreed with or who were senior to them, and it gave them meaning. I just saw one progressive institution after another collapse under the weight of these whack jobs. One example was, I watched it at the Nation. I'd basically cleared out of there, and I'd always tried to stay away from the office and just stay out of all the drama there. But I remember Katha Pollitt, very similar character, self-proclaimed feminist columnist. She just decided to wage this war on Matt Taibbi and Mark Ames, accusing them of being rapists because of satirical kind of bawdy columns they wrote back at the Exile when they were in Moscow. And the real reason she was doing it, working with Joan Walsh, another Felicia, who had been basically brought in to be the voice of the Democratic Party, just a complete propagandist for the DNC and the Hillary campaign. They were just upset that the publisher, Katrina vanden Heuvel, was married to the leading Russia expert in the United States, Stephen Cohen, who is warning against a new Cold War and opposing Russiagate. And they were saying, oh, he's a Trumper. And they saw Taibbi and Mark Ames also as too pro-Russia. So they started accusing them of being rapists. Matt Taibbi, I think, was on book tour at the time, or had just come out with a book about the police murder of Eric Garland. And it basically, this campaign sabotaged his book tour. It led to, I think, Katha Pollitt having to issue public retractions, but they continued waging war inside the nation to get their way and to push new Cold War hostility, but they were using sex as a way to get their way. And I saw it in so many institutions. I mean, I'm not ready to go public about it all. Maybe someday I'll write about the whole thing, but it was one after another. I mean, we should ask, what happened to the real news? Where is it today? It's gone. Where's Truthdig? It's gone. Where is Alternet? Gone.
Why?
What happened to the Nation Institute? Gone. What happened to the New Republic? What happened there?
I don't know.
A lot of it all comes back to this kind of culture of canceling and exploiting sexual issues so that sociopaths who have no talent and who believe in nothing can get their way. And that's really why so many writers are moving to Substack, because no one can do this to them there. Why I have one, I mean, it's not the real reason I have the Grayzone. The reason I started it is because we write about things that are impossible to write about anywhere in mainstream media or to report on, even in whatever's left of progressive media, because they're all imperialist. But there's also the fact that I don't have to deal with that bullshit culture anymore. It's also why I don't want to live in Brooklyn and be around all of those repulsive characters, the Vice crowd.
Jesus.
But I mean, this culture has worked its way into mainstream media, and it's now become a cancer at the heart of these August legacy institutions that say democracy dies in darkness. It's also in the New York Times, and the NPR is not only infested by these kinds of people, it's controlled by them. You can just tell from the kind of content they pump out every day. And the public is sick of it. That's why more and more people are turning to Substack and alternative media.
Max, you're like the third or fourth reporter that I know that have specifically mentioned this massive thing that happened in all left-wing journalism of deliberate, like, fake things to move somebody out of the way for extra power in the organ. Like the fourth guy to tell me about this.
Every major progressive flagship online institution that I worked with was sabotaged on the basis of what I consider to be utter bullshit by sociopaths. And the other thing about it is that most of the people working there weren't going along with it, but they were terrified. Yeah, and I remember just the terror experience, talking to people, and they were like, just keep your head down, just don't say anything. I was like, yeah, man, I don't want to deal with this shit. I want to report on international politics. I don't want to deal with this, but people were like, they were so afraid. That's why you see all those Washington Post reporters issuing these statements that like Amazon PR agents told them to write, because they don't want to be accused of any, who knows what lies can be concocted by one arsonist within the building that will tear their lives apart.
Yeah, no, they're absolute cowards. They won't call any of these people out until.
I mean, it really would require them all coming together as a group and taking a stand, and they're not willing to do that. And the Washington Post, institutions like that attract cowards because they are stenographers for power,
yes,
who just want media jobs in a shrinking, collapsing, and widely hated industry.
Yeah, right. They don't want to say anything until the PR department told them what to say. Why would you be a reporter if that's how you are? I can't say anything until the company tells me.
All right.
Basically, like if you spend some years in an institution, and I'm not even like necessarily presenting my own experience here. If you spend years in an media institution, and you're not married or whatever, you're going to wind up maybe like sleeping with some of your colleagues because everybody gets drunk together and they have this little insular world.
Yeah.
And then if you start coming under, people know your secrets and people know your shit. And then when all this starts happening and one person decides to sabotage everything, you become afraid that will come out, and you just keep your head down and you're silent. And it creates a kind of almost totalitarian atmosphere where only the silent survive. And even if they've done nothing wrong, maybe they don't want their current partner to know about that, to come out on social media.
Well, I could forgive that guy. The people that come out and join in with it, I assume those guys are literal rapists. Like, a guy's like, I, for one, think this is great.
Yeah.
Or something. I think you did something. That's what I assume.
I'm always suspect of those guys. You're right. All right, we got to wrap it up. We got Danny Haiphong coming on next to talk about his censorship. So I want to say thanks to Max Blumenthal. Everybody check out his work at thegrayzone.com and their channel on YouTube. And everybody check out Kurt this weekend in Fort Worth, Texas at Hyenas. And his podcast, Can't Get Right, with Kurt Metzger. All right, thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Max. Talk to you later. Here, we're doing stand-up comedy in Los Angeles on June 11th, and then we're going to Chicago, Sacramento, and San Diego on July 16th for the taping of my new special. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets. See you there.